Hello, everybody. Welcome back to today's episode of the podcast with Joe and I.
By the way, we did pick a name, so it's Navigating
Life and Love with Brooklyn and Joe.
Gotta love that alliteration, am I right? But we have such a fun topic, and yet it's fun. It's actually very stressful. Let's be honest. Like, it's kind of crazy. Then I don't know how many people when they're dating think about what we're about to talk about right now, which is the cultural differences that we had to face. And we're going to talk about it more in Brooklyn side, but we're going to preface everything by talking about my story just a little bit in the beginning. And I'll just kind of jump right into it, which is, so I am natively South Korean. That's where I was born. Can't say I was raised there because I was only there till I was 5, right? And when I was 5, my parents moved here to the U.S., and one of the major reasons is because in South Korea, you have to serve a 2-year military as like a mandatory type situation. And my dad, and that's a whole different story. We can talk about that in my background story. But that's one of the big things because my dad actually felt that it's kind of unfair. And in the US, there's a lot more opportunity. And that's the biggest reason my parents came here to the US and brought their children, is because they took the chance on the opportunity. And I am so incredibly blessed that they took this opportunity and moved here to the States, even though it must have been incredibly stressful for them. I would love to.
I cannot even imagine. Like,
Seriously.
The more that I know about your family and the more that I really think about that kind of a situation, I cannot imagine how stressful that would be.
Or just any family. I'm not the only immigrant in the US, right? Like, that is pretty wild.
If I had to move my family with 2 kids to Korea, even not knowing the language and starting from scratch, it would be like, I admire them so much.
But even at that, it's easier still if you natively speak English, because it is almost a universal language across the world, coming from a very minority spoken language into trying to fit into the majority is a crazy thing. And any parents that are, that you're probably not listening to it, but if you're a child of a first generation immigrant family, thank your parents, because they took a huge risk and made it change. And we found a lot of blessings in doing so. But that's just a little bit of a background on my immigration story of moving to the States.
Yeah.
But
I wanted to set the scene for you real quick. One of the biggest surprises that I had when we got married, because Joe and I met and got engaged very quickly.
We did. By the way, we went to BYU, Idaho, and we grew up LDS. And so if you ask why we got engaged very quickly, we could also talk about that in our history of our marriage, because it is fun. Like, we did get we got engaged
within, I believe, 4 months.
4 months.
And I think that we were married 3-4 months, 6 months after that.
I think 6 months total from the day we met.
We met right before Halloween.
Yep.
And we were married
in April.
So we were married by Easter.
By the way, I do know my anniversary date, so.
Yes. Yeah. He probably knows them better than I do.
But yeah, I mean.
So I didn't have the opportunity to meet Joe's family in person before the rehearsal dinner for our wedding.
Yeah. That, by the way, just think about that for a second, guys. Brooklyn hasn't met my family, and we talked in like FaceTime and stuff, but not in person.
Yeah.
I met her family. Again, we could talk about that in a different story, but when we were dating, I don't think neither of us really considered what it meant marrying each other's culture.
Because I know that you grew up in your family dynamic.
Yep.
You grew up in your household, and that's what you're used to. So that is your normal. When you were dating, whether with me or the many other women before me, was that something that you really considered?
I was not a slut. But it's okay. I'm sure no kids are listening, but for the most part, no, I think when we're dating, when you're young, you tend to be a little bit naive. And like Brooklyn said, we grew up in our own house, which, if you guys are listening, truly try to look back on how you were raised. Like, it is actually a fun little flashback you'll have. But I didn't think it was going to be that much of a problem, because I actually, as you guys may know, like, Asian parents, if get B's, like, I disown you type situation. No, like, I just actually disowned the whole Korean culture of it as a whole, because I never liked it. Now, I have a lot more respect for it now. I was more young and naive, but I hated being Korean in every sense of the word. I really did. I didn't like the Asian accent. A lot of Asians will have an immigrant. So if you guys hear me speak now, I have lost a lot of my Asian accent. And one of my greatest compliments I received as a kid was saying over the phone when landlines were there, they were like, hey, I was like, hey, this is the Lee household. And they're like, Lee household? Are you Asian? They're like, yes, we are. And I was like, well, you sound white. I'm like, oh, thank you. That was, it's funny, but it was actually one of the best compliments I would receive because I really hated having an Asian culture. So when it comes to dating, I never thought that it would actually be a problem because yes, I was born in South Korea, came here, lived in a South Korean home and cultured in South Korean home, but I've always taken on the American culture. I love, the American dream in every sense of the word. Like that's what I always wanted. And I grew up around all American culture. Like I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is a very liberal, diverse city or city town. But I primarily was hanging around a bunch of like white and black families who are very, I would say, the American culture back in the early 2000s, right?
Yes,
and
100%.
So I didn't think it was going to be I didn't think it was going to be an issue when I was marrying a white girl, because I always knew I was going to marry a white person. And again, we could always talk about that in another podcast as well. But I didn't think it was going to be an issue. But coming from the other side, which is now going to be
the other side.
Yeah. Now, by the way, now we're going to shift the dynamic, guys. So I'm going to start asking Brooklyn a lot more questions, which is, did you think it was actually going to be hard marrying into my family, being South Korean?
To be honest, I had no idea that it was going to be, because Joe is very culturally American.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
But that does not mean that my family isn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'd heard them speak on the phone. And I'd heard Joe speak Korean. But I just assumed that was what he had spoken at home growing up. Ergo, it was the more comfortable language to speak with his parents, but they probably knew English very well. Anyways, it just wasn't their preferred language. And it was, I don't know, I definitely had to go through a little bit, and I think your parents as well, of almost a grieving period of what I thought the relationship with your family was going to be versus what it actually is. Not to say that we don't have an amazing relationship now.
We do, yeah. I mean, and we never not had a great incredible relationship. Yeah.
It was just different.
It was.
Because I thought that I was going to be, like when I first met your parents, I thought I was going to ask all of these get to know you questions. I was going to talk to them about my major and talk to them about why I love Joe so much and what I planned on doing in my life. And unfortunately, those kinds of conversations haven't ever really been accessible for us to have.
No, and my parents have been let's see, since I was 5, I'm 28 now. So they've been living in the States for 23 years. Mm-hmm. And you would think that they would be fluent by now. They're not. They have very, very, very limited knowledge of the English vocabulary and even understanding. You can, as you guys know, if you talk to anyone that's a first generation immigrant, their English is there, but like it's not, you're not going to have an intricate conversation or a very deep or emotional conversation.
Yeah.
Even if you really, really wanted to. Sometimes it's hard.
And in my mind, that was the only way to build a relationship, was the get to know you questions. It was the deep conversations connecting on a personal level. And I know that your mom, because she has all boys, wanted a daughter that she could have that kind of a relationship with. And I think that she also had a little bit of a hard time. I know that she told you that she was pretty disappointed that you were marrying someone who couldn't speak Korean.
We want to make sure we preface this. I know my mom's not going to listen to this and completely understand, but I want to, I'm not trying to define my parents, but in the sense of they were very, very disappointed that I wasn't going to marry a Korean girl.
I don't even blame them though, simply because we were a little bit more naive and we didn't fully understand what that meant,
Well, and the biggest thing is, if you guys don't know what that would be like for a parent, if you're a loving parent, wouldn't you always want a very good relationship with your in-laws and your son-in-law or daughter-in-law or who you're so and that's my parents. My parents really, really, really was looking forward, because first of all, there's an 11-year gap between myself and my youngest brother. So I have an older brother who's 2 years older and a younger brother that's 11 years older. Now, one of the reasons there's an 11-year gap is my parents really wanted a daughter. And I guess it was the last attempt at a hurrah, wanting a daughter.
Roll call, trying.
Yeah.
It was what do they call it
Hail
in
Mary.
football? Hail
Mary pass to try to have
Hail
a
Mary pass.
little girl. And unfortunately, that was not the case. Now we have Tevin, my little brother, who they love incredibly, they love with all their heart. But I remember actually my mom legitimately crying when they found out it was a boy. Because again, who doesn't want a gender of, one gender of each at least, right?
Yeah.
And so,
your mom is such a wonderful person.
She's a very loving and caring person.
She's also very girly. Like it's something that I've learned not by talking to her, but more the way that she interacts with me and the way that I see her interact with her friends.
Yeah.
I've been able to pick up a little here and there that she is very girly and enjoys those kinds of things. And we would get along really well if we could talk about them.
Yeah. And so the disappointment comes in the fact that my mom really hoped that she can have a daughter-in-law she can talk to.
Yeah. Like I said, just grieving what the original idea of the relationship was and kind of letting that go so that you can have room for the other one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the perfect example, in my opinion, of what it's like being a non-Korean speaker in a Korean conversation. If you have seen the recent Pedro Pascal SNL skit.
By the way, this is in February 26, 2023. So just for future references.
Yes. There's a skit that he does where he is playing a mom, a Hispanic mom, and complaining about the girlfriend that his son brought home. And it's mostly in Spanish, but there's just enough words in English thrown in there that you can kind of tell.
And that's the same thing for Korean. There's actually a lot of same words in Korean.
Yes.
And plus, I'm not fluent in Korean, by the way. So that's the other part. When I talk to my parents, there's enough English words I have to throw in because my Korean vocabulary is very poquito, which is Spanish actually. But yeah, it's not that much.
So when we went to visit Michigan for the first time after we'd been married to stay with his parents, the thing that surprised me the most was how exhausted I was trying to keep up with the conversation, even though there was no way that I could fully understand what was being said because most of it was in Korean. I know Joe. I know his body language. I know his intonations. And I know the English words that he's putting out there.
Well, I hope you know the English words you're putting out there.
But the rest of it was, I'd say Greek to me because that's the phrase, but it was Korean to me. And I wanted so badly to be able to understand your family and be able to pitch in and throw some of my own opinions in there. Right? I wanted to be part of it. I wanted so badly. And it was exhausting trying to keep up with a conversation that was in a different language, which is
by
another.
the way, that's one of the major naiveties we had. Unless we don't regret being married.
No,
no means, but were we naive in thinking there's actually like the cultural difference, language barrier that things you don't talk about? I mean, is there a college class about, hey, if you marry an interracial marriage, like here's some of the things to watch out for, not watch out, but for like just be aware of. You might be a little bit more exhausted than your typical conversation you have with your friends because you don't even understand what you're trying to. And it's different than like watching a movie in like subtitle. For example, like Squid Games was super popular, right?
Yes. It's so different.
Yeah. Now imagine take out the subtitles.
And you can see what's happening, but you can't even see what's happening because we're sitting around a dinner table.
Yeah. There's not like any visual key marks. We're just talking, right?
And so I remember I was so sad. And I think that I don't know if I cried to you, but I was talking to you about it. And I was like, I just want to be part of this conversation so badly. And Joe told me, he was like, one of the things I appreciate is Joe's never told me or asked me to learn Korean.
No,
he's only told me it is an option if you want to be able to communicate with my parents better.
I just have flashcards everywhere. I'm just kidding, guys. Seriously, I am kidding.
And I appreciate you not making that decision for me. Yeah. And it is something that I would like to learn in the future. But for other things in our life right now, it's just not a priority.
Yeah. And trust me, we do have a lot of it's not
because a lot going on.
It's not because we don't have a lot. We have so much going on in our lives that, and again, we'll talk about another podcast if you guys are curious. But yeah, that's some of the things you never really think about being a white person marrying into a family that natively speaks a different language.
Yeah. It was very hard. But I think that the crazy thing is, if you had told me on that Michigan trip that I would have a great relationship with your parents, I would have just been like, how?
Yeah.
I literally don't understand it. And even now, as I look at it, it's hard for me to kind of put words to. But even though we don't speak the same language, even though any American food is too salty for them, and so any of the foods that I love, I'm not going to try and take them to restaurants to show them what I like, or, you know.
Well, okay, that's not true, because your taste bud has changed quite a bit.
It has.
Yeah.
When we first met, I had such a hard time with pork belly.
Yeah, which is samgyeopsal, by the way.
But now I love it.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, even though we can't communicate, it's crazy to me how the love is there.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And that's the thing is, again, you guys, like, that's something we were naive, and we just want to share because we didn't really, it's not like we were educated before then, by no means. And it doesn't mean we regret anything.
No.
But it's just, it's something, I guess, a little bit fun fact to maybe know.
Yeah.
And that's something that if you guys are dating anyone that's, again, in our past experience, I hope this is somewhat educational for you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean, again, love is I would say almost a universal language. It is kind of crazy to think that you actually have a pretty good relationship with my mom when you have never spoken
talk.
like a free,
I especially
full sentence.
Obviously Joe and I like talking together.
Yeah.
We're on a podcast right now, but one of our favorite things to do in our free times is go on a long walk and talk.
Sorry. Not only that, one of our core beliefs is over communication. We truly, truly, truly believe in communicating
with each other. And so it was very, and continues to be very eye-opening for me, and kind of nourishing in a different way to realize the different types of communication that are there.
Yeah.
Because even though I can't talk to your mom, she mothers me, and she is just so kind to me. And
I think it's a perfect example of, like, actions speak so much louder than words a lot of the times. Like, my mom is the kind of person who's not passive at all. And she's also sometimes very frank. Again, first of all, if you guys are Korean, I'm sure, hopefully you're laughing about this, because my mom isn't that much different than any other Korean mom out there, which Koreans are very, very passionate, passionate individuals. Like, my mom, especially women that are Korean, are very, very passionate. They give constantly. That's part of their love language, whether it is or not. It's just culturally thing to give. Not maybe in gifts sometimes, but like in actions of
give in actions.
Yeah,
bringing me food, bringing me snacks, giving me hugs, telling me how pretty I am.
Yeah, imagine every single love language, and that is my mom. She gives it all the time. Yes. Like, that is who she is.
Constant hugs, holding my, when we're walking, either holding my hand or putting her arms around me, or like so many things.
And food, just like she's always trying to
always
cook
food.
Up. Yeah.
If I'm ever at their house for an extended period of time and I don't have food, a bowl of something will appear next to me.
Literally, whenever I had friends at my house, she would always ask them for snacks, and even everyone says no, there would still be a bowl of snacks.
Even if you don't want it, even if you truly do not want it, you are going to be given a bowl of snacks.
Yeah, it's funny.
And a hug. And so it's just crazy, learning how that relationship can grow has been eye-opening for me. And I've really appreciated it, because it's helped to open my view of what love and a good relationship is and can be. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think I'm just going to put the last 10 minutes-ish, guys, because that was our pretty much whole take on this story, which is Brooklyn's time marrying into a Korean family.
Yes.
That was what you guys clicked into, but here's just some fun questions that I'm going to just ask Brooklyn for you guys for kicks and giggles sake.
Okay.
But which is, even though you don't understand Korean very much, how much, I guess, aside from Korean, but any other cultures, how much more of appreciation do you have for things that are new into your life because you've been thrown into the deep end of having married into a different culture?
It's astronomically different. When we met, We went to a Korean soup restaurant.
Oh yeah.
And the first time
It's
we
called
went
Tang
there,
Tang Tang in Las Vegas.
so good, so delicious. Food's amazing. But I literally think that I cried because I couldn't figure out how to get the meat off of the bone.
Also, guys, if you guys are not Korean, a lot of Korean dishes are not are they just spicy sometimes, but they're just temperature wise hot. They are
whether
boiling
it's
hot.
spicy or it's boiling, it's hot.
Yeah.
And hot. Okay, you know it's a good Korean restaurant if they have scissors on the table for you to use too.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that was a tool. And Joe was catching up with his family and I was sitting there with chopsticks that I couldn't use and a boiling hot soup trying to eat it because I was hungry and tired and all of this stuff. But nowadays, I figured it out. I feel like I'm a pro.
Yeah.
And I have been able to try so many amazing new foods. I've been able to learn about different cultures. And because I've had that eye-opening of what relationships can be besides just being able to talk fluently to somebody, I am much more brave, honestly, when it comes to trying new things and trying new foods and experiences and cultures.
Yeah, whether you marry, like you guys might be married in 2 Koreans, 2 white, 2 Indian, 2 Mexican, or interracial of any means. I think no matter what, one of the big life lessons is the more you try, the more appreciation you're going to have. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm going to try and hold some things for sure, but just like the multiple things you introduce into your life, the more likelihood you're probably going to try the next thing. If you've never tried anything new, you're probably not going to continuously try. And the world is so much bigger than one culture. It's so much bigger than
really
2 cultures. Like for us, because we've had to open ourselves into trying a lot of new things. I feel like we're a bit more adventurous than what the typical average person might be.
Yeah.
I mean, for crying
out loud, I will say,
once. You guys, when we say we're busy, we are so crazy busy. Trust me, we've tried a lot. Like in the sense of like, I personally I've started about 7 different business ventures, and that's a whole different thing. We also have, like we've been able to try a lot. And part of that is I'm very grateful for the fact that we had this naivety coming into this marriage, because one of the biggest things that we focus on is progress. And you can't have progress without, first of all, a starting point, which we got married or we started dating, and then progression, which is the next thing, which because you've had to learn so much. I've had to learn so much. We're able to continuously learn together and find enjoyment doing so. Because first of all, you guys have fun story back in our honeymoon. There was a restaurant, I forgot what it's called right now, but there is a Korean fried chicken place. And we went to New York City, by the way, for our honeymoon. Super fun, and Brooklyn's never been. I didn't realize this restaurant was there, and my parents highly recommended. So we went, I think, day 2 or look
one
back
of
on our
the
vlogs.
First days.
Yeah, we literally vlogged our entire honeymoon. So you guys go back but in Korean foods, not only is it, temperature, when it's temperature hot and it's actually spicy as well, you tend to sweat a lot and profusely when you're eating.
I had never in my life seen anybody with what I don't know if other people call it the meat sweats.
Well, okay, you get meat sweats regardless,
but not just meat sweats, but like so spicy that like his face is red and
like nose is running,
and I don't really love spicy food. I don't like when food hurts.
I mean, first of all, when's the last time you've ever seen anyone eat like that? You know what I mean?
Never in my life.
But
and
that's
I
so
was
common
like, what are you doing?
It's like such a big compliment too when you're just like just drenched in sweat, red face, just like snot coming, not like real snot, but like the running snot coming down. By the way, we ate there 3 times in our honeymoon. This is one.
Jill kept going back.
Yeah, but it's kind of like a fun cultural shock that I didn't realize that Brooklyn probably never faced as well. Yeah, like it was just a fun little thing that surprise. And by the way, the reason she's never seen it is seen me eat like that, because I really enjoy eating like that, is she's never been to my house when we were engaged or when we were dating. And we lived in Rexburg, Idaho at that time. There's no Korean restaurants in Rexburg, Idaho. And
they have a McDonald's.
Yeah. I mean, they have Thai place.
They have one Thai place.
Yeah, they do have one Thai place. They have some couple of Chinese places. But regardless, we have so many fun stories about having you married into a Korean family. vice versa, reverse wise, me marrying into a white family, there's not really that much of a crazy story because, like I said, I've always wanted to.
Yeah, you've been culturally American for majority of your life.
Yeah, and that's it's really fun looking back on it. So if you guys are in an interracial marriage, look back at some of the fun differences you guys have within. It might be silly arguments, it might be fun stories, but honestly, I think there's things in your past that if you look back into, there's actually things you can appreciate so much more now than you could have just, having it be the past.
Staying in your safety zone.
Yeah, but aside from that, we're coming up to the 30-minute mark here. But Brooklyn, do you have any fun last stories or advice for girls or guys who may want to date a Korean person?
My biggest piece of advice is honestly just be open to love in all of its forms.
Yeah.
Giving and receiving. Whether or not you can talk with them, chow down on the food, give them a hug. Like show love in all of its forms and receive it in all of its forms.
And I think the biggest thing, if you guys want to take away from anything, is that just because you can't communicate with someone, it doesn't mean that love isn't there. You can, like Brooklyn said, you can show love in so many different ways aside from even just understanding each other through words, which is pretty crazy. Like truly just think about that for a second. Imagine if you could never talk to anyone, but you could still convey an immense amount of love. It's fun. But you guys, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. If you want to learn or know more fun stories, like comment down below that you want to hear more fun Korean shocking cultural stories. We have a lot of them. So
yes.
And we have, we would love to share it with you guys. So you comment down below if you want to hear more. If you have your own fun stories, also comment down below because we would love to read them. And, I think we want to build a little community around here in YouTube and the podcast platform of, positivity, great relationship advice or fun stories. I think, you guys probably have a lot of fun stories. We want to hear them. So thank you so much for watching or listening. Hit that subscribe button. And I need to figure out what button you press for the podcast, which I could probably just look at my phone, but I will do it later. You guys, thank you so much for listening and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Peace.